Afghanistan is the only country on the planet where women are prevented from having an education and playing sport, which makes it seem rather odd that they'll be competing at the first ever gender-equal Olympic Games in Paris 2024. So how did this come about? When South Africa had an apartheid regime, they were prevented from competing at the Olympic Games. In fact, their National Olympic Committee was banned from the IOC. What's the difference with Afghanistan? Is the IOC right in fighting really hard to make sure that the Afghanistan team in Paris would have an equal number of women? Those women coming from outside Afghanistan for obvious reasons, many of them ones who had fled when the Taliban took over. Is the IOC right in saying that they are trying to give hope to the women inside Afghanistan, where presumably very little exists? Or is it a cynical exercise so they can say that they have achieved gender equality at an Olympic Games for the very first time? It's a question that I put to the IOC at a press conference last week. I also spoke to Roman Abbasi, who was a former member of Afghanistan's national taekwondo team, a medalist at international events, who was also really active in supporting women in Afghanistan before the Taliban took over. And he had to flee the country along with many of the female athletes because their lives were under threat. Before we hear from Roman, here is the question and the answer from the IOC's spokesperson, Mark Adams, and the Associate Director of NOC Relations, Jerome Pape.
Let's go to Tracy Holmes, Sports Ambassador. I'm not sure if that's your title or if that's who you're working for, Tracy, but please go ahead, Tracy.
It's definitely not my title. I just want to go back to the Afghanistan question once again, and I know that you've said that you're not recognising any Taliban officials and the NOC is in exile, but the national federations or the sports from which the athletes are coming are very much inside Afghanistan. So I'm just wondering what sort of safeguards have been put in place for the female athletes particularly to make sure that there is no kind of pressure exerted on them in any particular way. And then secondary to that, does it seem a little bit cynical on the IOC's part where you have invited these women, which is great because we're looking at 50-50 in Paris, but they will be representing a country where they're not allowed to go to school and they're not allowed to participate in any sport whatsoever. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pass over to Jerome in a second, but and clearly that is always a dilemma. But I think the choice that we make, and I think it's the right choice, is that we want to show to the world what can be, and that women can compete and should compete from all those countries. And I think that's a very good and strong symbol to send not just to the world, but also obviously to Afghanistan. They will be aware that that is going on. It's a choice and there are trade-offs, but I think we make the right choice. Jerome, can you speak a little bit to safeguards and dealing with the authorities in the country?
Yes, so basically what we are doing is, first of all, to continue the dialogue with the local sports authorities, because we believe that this is, the right approach to continue the discussion. We all know that we have not been able to achieve too much so far, but we continue the discussion. And 2 days ago, we had again an online meeting. We keep these regular meetings with them and trying to push for the inclusion of women and young girls in the participation in all the sports activities, etc., in the country. So this is something that we are very much pushing with sports authorities. We know that it is extremely difficult, but at the same time we want to keep this symbol of hope, and that's exactly the reason why since day one it was decided that we would have a gender mixed team for the Paris Games, and that's clearly a symbol of hope. Now the NOC leadership is partly now living in exile, as you probably know. some of the other leadership of the national federations and the NOC are still based in Kabul. So this is kind of, a mix that we have. But thanks to that and thanks to the leadership that is in exile, we can have this gender mixed team in Paris.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you, Tracy.
I want to talk to you about the Olympic Games because Paris 2024 is just around the corner. Afghanistan will be competing, and a lot has been made by the International Olympic Committee about Paris being the first Olympic Games in more than 100 years where there will be a gender equality. So every team will have men and women. And I find this a little bit, I don't know what to make of it because I find it concerning in some ways, but also a bit cynical in others that there will be a team from Afghanistan. There'll be 3 men and 3 women. Clearly, the women are not coming from inside Afghanistan because they're banned from education and sport. But the IOC says it's important that every nation has women there. So these women will come from living in other countries, presumably because they've fled Afghanistan, and yet they'll be marching under the flag of Afghanistan. I don't know how they feel about that. Clearly, they want to compete. They want to be Olympians. I understand that. And everybody has a hope that their country will one day be better. But what do you think about this situation with women being picked from outside to compete under the Afghanistan flag?
Yeah, Tracy, it has been more than 1 year that I sent emails and official emails to the IOC and also international federations. The last emails that I received from International Olympic Committee, they mentioned that they're serious about this matter, their negotiation with the Taliban government, and the Taliban, they promised that they will send some girls to the Olympic Games. But the big issue is that those girls are not from Afghanistan. They came from other countries like from Europe countries. I saw one girl that she joined the Olympic. She came from France, and the boys as well. They are not from Afghanistan. Most of them, they were living in Afghanistan. But on other side, still the Taliban government is not recognized by other countries, and there's when a government is don't recognize from other countries, there's no flag as well. For that, the previous flag is also don't mean now because that's not acceptable. And the bad things that still International Olympic Committee, they just focus about Olympic Games. But we are talking about the rights of a sport in Afghanistan for women. It's not just for 1 game, just Olympic Games just for 1 month or 1 week or 1 month. After that, when we are finishing the game, it's almost 2 years. It's the International Olympic Committee responsibility to start on the first day when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, negotiate with them, talk with them, and had some meetings with them. That this is it's a value for Olympic, it's a value for us that we want girls and women to join in a sport. And after 2 years, there's the only thing that their achievement is just the 3 girls participate on Olympic Games, and those girls not from Afghanistan. And if those girls participate under the Afghanistan names, it will be a big credit for the Taliban. They're not they banned the sport in Afghanistan, but the Olympic Committee, they showed that no, still the Afghanistan women is participating in Olympic Games. And as a person in Afghanistan, I request from Olympic, you're supporting Taliban in this case. Tell them the truth to everyone, especially for the world, that there is no rights for women. The sport is banned for women in Afghanistan. And I'm sure everyone's right. I personally write about them, and I encourage our Olympians and world champions in Afghanistan and other countries that the fact is not that women is not allowed to sport in Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's really an interesting one. And
the IOC says that it's important that they help send a message of hope to everybody around the world, and particularly for the women of Afghanistan. But none of those messages will be seen inside Afghanistan. So I don't think it offers any hope to the women who are there. But many of the women who are outside Afghanistan, maybe they will be happy to see women competing for Afghanistan. I don't know.
Yeah, most of the girls that they're in Afghanistan, still they're waiting to go to the gym, go to the club, go to the school, go to the education, and many other things. They just stay in a house, and the Olympic Committee, the IOC, shows that the women's competing in the Olympic Games. I think it's unfair. It's just fake, and it's like you, in other side, you're supporting Taliban, and for us, those girls that they're participating in Olympic Games, those maybe 3 or 4 girls, it's not important for us. There's a millions of girls that they're not allowed to go to the school, education, and work. We think about those millions girls, and also more than 1,000 Afghanistan national teams, the women's national team from different sports, they were still in Afghanistan that they're not sporting. They're not allowed to go to the gym, to go to the club, go to the stadiums, and they just stay in a house. We think more about those girls that they're in Afghanistan, not just for 3 girls, not just for Olympic Games. We have it's more than 2 years. Our big achievement is just 3 girls participating in Olympic. It's not a big achievement, I think.